I'm glad that you actually are doing this on the International Heart Day. It gives me a bit of a lead because I was asked to speak about the education sector to you tonight. In Fiji at the moment, if any one of us, God forbid, has a heart attack at the moment, there's not a single Fijian doctor that is a specialist who can carry out open heart surgery. In 21st century Fiji, it is actually quite a tragedy that we don't have a single Fijian doctor that is an open heart surgeon. And the reason behind this, ladies and gentlemen, has been fundamentally a lack of investment in our education sector, and indeed a lack of investment in the medical profession. The good doctor is sitting next to me, and he will tell you that for years the medical fraternity in Fiji had been neglected. Today in Fiji, if you actually become a doctor in the public health sector, you have the opportunity to be able to carry out postgraduate studies which the government actually pays for you to complete, because we want to actually develop specialists. But just to contextualize about the education sector, the Fijian Constitution is a good place to start off with. The Fijian Constitution under Section 21 guarantees everybody's right to be able to practice whichever religion, whichever denomination they want to practice. It also gives, under that particular section, the ability of that particular faith group to set up schools through their respective religious organizations. And that is a right that everybody has. And further goes on to say that in those schools you have the ability to also impart the teachings of that particular faith that you have, that particular faith organization that sets up. So for example, in your case, with the CMF that set up a school, obviously the school is open to everybody, but you also have a specialist focus on teaching the teachings of CMF. In the same way, for example, you have Methodist schools, you have Catholic schools, you have Hindu-based schools, Islamic or Muslim-based schools, LDS, Assemblies of God. Everybody has the ability to do that. And indeed, government is very much recognizes, I should say, the contribution that faith-based organizations and what we call community committees have actually made towards the education sector in Fiji. Because if tomorrow we were to take out all the faith-based organizations, if they were to stop running their schools, if the community committees stop running the schools, then there would be very few government schools left. It is only through the work of the various respective faith-based organizations that we have what we call a network of educational facilities throughout Fiji. Of course, education is now free, which means that we pay for the school fees of all the students, right from early childhood education to primary school to secondary school. And of course now, if they were to go to university, we provide the ability for them to get what we call the Topper Scholarship, which has recently been increased to 950 positions, including 20 for overseas. And then we have what we call the TELS program. Should a person not get what we call a Topper Scholarship, they have the ability to access a interest fee-based loan where they can actually get access to university and then pay back once they've started working. I am happy to announce, ladies and gentlemen, that we've done the analysis of the statistics. As a result of free education, we today have far more students in primary, secondary schools and also universities. But what is really interesting also is that we have far more females in primary schools, secondary schools, and universities than ever before. And one of the reasons why that is because we found out that for many families, when they had large families and the parents had to make choice as to who would actually attend school because they could not afford to pay the fees for everybody, the parents chose to send the boys to school as opposed to the girls, because the thinking was the girls would get married and go away in any case. So as a result of that, we're now seeing more girls in school, and in fact many of them have taken up the opportunity and indeed gone on to university. The other aspect that I'd like to also talk about education, there's a number of issues pertaining to education. I think it's very important. Many of you over here would be parents. As you know, we've been holding budget consultations throughout Fiji for the past couple of years, and we do so also with high school students. And I remember about 2 years ago, At Suva Grammar School, we had about 250 students from all different schools throughout the Suva area, or Suva zone. And one lady from one of the schools stood up and said, she said, you know, we don't have proper trained student counselors. So none of the schools have that, and we want proper trained student counselors. And she, in a way, sort of had a go at all the teachers. And as soon as she said that, the whole 250 students all started clapping, basically cheering what she was saying. And I said to them, I said, yes, I agree with you that we don't have enough counselors. And many of the students, I said, many of the students actually have been the beneficiaries of counseling by teachers who are not trained student counselors. However, those teachers actually have a passion for looking after the students, but we can't blame them for not having the qualifications. So then I said, well, look, we are working on that. We want to have more student counselors. Then I asked them a simple question. I said, how many of you, most of them are year 12 and year 13 students, I said, how many of you, after you finish high school, want to pursue a career as a counselor? Not a single person put up their hand. Not a single person put up their hand. So our ability to actually attract counselors to the workforce is limited because we don't have counselors. But the question we have to ask also is this: how many of us as parents would encourage our children to pursue a career as a counselor? Most parents want their children to become accountants and doctors and engineers, you know, what we call the in careers. But some of us may actually recognize that your child may be very good at listening. Your child may be somebody that has empathy or develops empathy with other people around them. So perhaps that is their calling. The reason why I'm saying this, ladies and gentlemen, is because in Fiji currently, we lack a lot of specialist people. We don't even have a fully qualified speech therapist, a Fijian speech therapist. Many of our children, some of our children, when they are born, they may have a slight impediment with their speech. If we don't actually intervene at the right time, then they may be able to, they may lose their speech forever and grow into adulthood in that way. But if we make the right interventions at the right time with the right qualified people, they'll overcome the problem. Similarly, with things like auditory impediment and various other impediments that are actually not necessarily permanent, but can actually be reversed. But you need a specialist to do that. So this is why in the budget, for your information, we have now extended the number of scholarships, toppers available. But we've also said for the first time that we'll offer 20 scholarships for those students who finish year 13 who actually want to pursue a career and they get a place in a university to go overseas, and we'll pay for the undergraduate studies. We offer 20 positions. So if, for example, if somebody wants to do architecture, out of the 3 universities, none of them actually offer an undergraduate course in architecture. None of them actually offer a course in actuarial studies, biomedical engineering. There's a whole list of subject areas or professional areas that we don't actually have in Fiji. So we want to pursue those areas because we need to have the right people in the right places based on a merit to carry on with those jobs. Otherwise, we will lose the economic momentum. We've been growing for 9 years. As a result of the growth of 9 years, today we now pay $100 a month to people who are over the age of 65. There are many elderly people in Fiji who have been villagers, who have been, who are farmers, who may be doing their tete for the whole of their life, maybe living in some remote place. There are a lot of women in Fiji, unfortunately, who we call house girls. They've worked as house girls, but they've never had any sort of formal payment of salaries. They don't have superannuation. So those people, when they turn 65, without that pension being paid to them, they don't have any form of social security. So we now pay $100 to anybody a month over the age of 65 who does not have FNPF. We are only able to do that because the economy is growing and we're getting the right people in the right places. But we will lose the momentum if our education sector does not keep up to pace. We have, for example, at the moment, there's a lot of opportunities in the, what do you call in the ITC sector. Some of you may know people who are, for example, working at call centers. They answer calls for people from overseas, etc. What is really interesting, there was a South African company that came to Fiji and they set up a call center. What this means is that if, for example, I'm in Australia and I've got insurance with an insurance company, instead of me calling up somebody from the insurance company, I will call somebody, I'll dial an Australian number, but the person answering the call will be somebody sitting in Fiji. Because it's cheaper for them to actually employ somebody from Fiji than to have an Australian sitting there. Many Australians don't want to do that type of job in any case. So many of these companies have set up call centers in India and Philippines on very large scale. So I asked the South African company, I said, why have you come to Fiji? They said, well, there are three key issues why we've come here. They said, firstly, your time zone is pretty good. You know, we're exactly 12 hours behind Greenwich Mean Time and fits in very well the time zones in other countries. Secondly, you've got good infrastructure in terms of the connectivity, you know, with mobile phones and also with the internet. And he said, thirdly, which I did not know about, he said, you Fijians actually have neutral accents. So I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you know, when you people speak, many people actually can understand you. When an Indian speaks or a Filipino speaks, they find it very hard to understand it. You know, the way they talk, da, da, da. So they spend literally millions of dollars when they go and set up call centers to train these people to sound like an Australian, to sound like an American, to sound like an Englishman or woman. So these are some of the advantages we have. So what we are doing now is we're encouraging that. We actually offer tax-free incentives. But what we've also found is that there are universities in Fiji do not have courses that are available in the ITC sector. So you do not have, for example, an administrative or management course in running an ITC call center. So we want people to be trained in that area too. So ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of opportunities in that sense. I was at the funeral of Mr. J. Narayan, the J. Narayan College, the person who actually taught there for over 50 years. And one of the issues that they did raise when talking about his life was that he apparently brought up the standards of J. Narayan College because he introduced new ways of teaching subjects. And today, of course, J. Narayan, I mean, when I was in Marist, nobody looked at J. Narayan. It was called Indian High School that time. You know, everybody looked down at Indian High School and various other schools. And you'll find today that many of those schools are, you know, surpassing the standards of the schools that traditionally were held to be very good. And I think this is, if I could give one message to the CMF education sector, the people who look after the education sector, to look at new ways of teaching and, in fact, imparting knowledge to students. Because you know the way that you impart knowledge to students is very different to what it was about 20, 30 years ago when we were in high schools. Today, most children have phones. They have access to internet. And the ability in respect of whether it is the attention span, whether it's the methodology of teaching, needs to change to be able to capture the attention, to be able to maintain this. Of course, issues such as, you know, discipline, teenage pregnancies, access to and indeed availability of drugs. All of these issues are very complex issues, but we need to integrate into our teaching environment. We have made an announcement that from next year onwards, and we hope to, God willing, by either the beginning of the first term or second term, introduce what we call, say, 2 streams of maths. Many people in Fiji, as you know, we've all been subjected to maths subjects. I hated maths when I was in school, but there's only one maths subject. And everybody, irrespective of whether you wanted to pursue maths at the university level or whether you're going to simply, you know, drop off when you finish school. In countries like Australia, they have 2 streams of maths, what they call the pure maths and what you have called life maths, you know, basic maths that you require to carry on with your day-to-day life. And the other one is things like algorithms, algebra, etc., and that you need if you want to pursue maths or if you want to pursue, you know, computer science, etc. So we want to introduce that because maths obviously is a compulsory subject. And many students who don't want to do complex maths should not be deprived of getting good marks in subjects. As a result of that, it brings down the morale of the students who don't want to pursue that and who are not interested in maths. So in this way, we'll be actually finding a niche for those people who do want to do maths, pure maths, and those who don't want to do that. So you'll find a number of changes in that respect. We're also really looking at our curriculum. There's some fundamental aspects. Of course, you know, the Curriculum in Fiji needs to be reviewed. We need to look at the syllabus. We are currently talking to the Australian government in respect of getting some expertise. In Fiji, the tradition has been those people who are in the Ministry of Education who look after curriculum or syllabus, they are former teachers. They simply come into the Ministry of Education and run that particular department. But if you go overseas, the people who run the curriculum department or develop syllabus, they are not teachers themselves. They're actually experts and specialists in that areas. Teaching is, being a teacher is one thing, and actually developing the curriculum to teach is a separate issue altogether. So these are the sort of fine approaches that we are actually adopting. So rounding off, I would also like to say that the quality and standard of English has actually deteriorated quite significantly. English, of course, is what we may call the lingua franca of our country. We are a former British colony. All formal documentation is in the English language. Our court system is run in the English language. Our lawyers actually make their, for example, proceedings in the English language. We communicate in the English language. And of course, that's what makes Fiji a lot more attractive to the rest of the world too, because we're able to communicate a lot better. Now, it reminds me of the young man from Tailevu who went with the PM to Bonn, and the fact that he could actually stand up there and give his speech about climate change in the English language captivated literally millions of hearts in the world. Literally, I don't know how many of you saw that on YouTube, but he did a fantastic job. Of course, there's another little girl from, I think, Nasarawanga, who joined him also. Now, we need to build on that capacity. So we are actually focusing also on making sure that we have proper English, being spoken, being taught, and also being written. So we are doing a revision of that. Some of you may have heard of Wailesi. We are using the Wailesi platform to connect all schools to the Wailesi channels. So if you connect to Wailesi, you can watch 8 channels. Of course, you have 3 channels from FBC, 2 from Fiji TV, 1 from My TV, and 1 is the Hope channel. And by going digital with television, we have the ability to develop a lot more channels. So one of the channels we also will be running educational programs. So we will, for example, as we're talking to the Australians now, have, for example, we can say, every second day we'll have at 10 a.m. we'll run the English program. So every school will have access to that particular language program. And what we are very keen about is this. Many people think by having access to technology, they say it's the greatest equalizer. It brings equality amongst everybody. So a rich person can have a mobile phone, a poor person can have a mobile phone. But it can be the greatest disequalizer if not everybody has access to connectivity. There are certain places in Fiji that still do not have connectivity. Or you have to hang from the branch of a coconut tree just to get a reception. So we are now getting connectivity everywhere. So we want a child who may be in some remote school in Kandavu to be able to have access to the same English language program that, say, a child may be having in Khalsa Road. That way we bring about what we call a lot more equality, equilibrium, and every Fijian child, irrespective of where they live, will be able to have access to that type of syllabus. So there's a number of reforms been taken out, and we are rolling out. We'll see a number of changes in the next 12 to 18 months. As you know, lastly, the civil service reform has been carried out also. We have over 10,000 teachers, close to 11,000 teachers whose salaries that government pay. So even though they may be teaching in CMF, they may be teaching in Maris Brothers High School, they may be teaching in Natumbo High School, they're teaching some school in Yasawas, even though they may be run by different faith-based organizations, they may be run by school committees or local committees, every single teacher's salary is paid for by government. This year's budget alone, the amount of salaries we pay to civil servants is close to $1.1 billion. That's the level of salaries. Of course, now in high schools, large high schools, the salary for a principal is over $100,000. Nobody dreamt only a few years ago that a principal in a large school would get paid over $100,000, but today they can. And so this is the type of development brought about. This civil service reforms is not only about increasing the salaries, it's not only about open merit recruitment system, but it is also about ensuring that we have specific career paths for teachers. So in the budget, we've announced that those teachers who have diplomas, there's about 30 scholarships available for them to upgrade from diploma to degree. There are also another set of scholarships available for teachers to upgrade from degree to masters. There's also another set of scholarships available for teachers and other civil servants to upgrade from masters to PhD. I remember when I was in Marist, we had teachers who had masters who were teaching in high school. Today it's very rare to find a teacher in high school specializing in a particular subject and still teaching in the high school. Many people go off to universities, etc. So that's what we're trying to do, ladies and gentlemen, to set up a very strong foundation within the education sector. And of course, I'd like to thank CMF for the new school that you built. We were there. I had the privilege of being there with the Honorable Prime Minister at the opening. And you know, it's fantastic to see these new schools being built. Of course, there are a lot of what we call demographic pressures. Nasinu now is the largest municipality in Fiji. So right from the 3 miles bridge all the way up to the 9 miles bridge is the largest municipality. There are a lot of, you have different diverse group of people. You have people who have moved in there. There are people who are squatters, people who come from Vanuatu and the other different parts of Fiji. And so different demographics at play, but obviously it means that government also has to focus on those heavily populated areas. So I'd like to thank you for your contribution to the education sector. We look forward to working with you. We are also carrying out, as announced in the budget, a review of all the schools in Fiji, a review of all the infrastructure. There are schools in Fiji, ladies and gentlemen, you would not believe, that have been set up by school committees that have, permanent holes in the floor. The children who come to boarding school. There's one particular school in the south of Bua, where students come from their primary school age, and they come from the smaller islands on a weekly basis to come and get their primary school education. They come by boat and they stay there. And the quality of the accommodation is not good. So at the moment, as you know, different school committees, managements, they write to us, can you please give us some money for this, for that. What we've done is we're going to do a stock take of all the schools, then prioritize and say which schools needs most the quickest attention. Once we do that, then we have a concerted effort in respect of getting development funding towards those schools and ensuring that the quality of the infrastructure in all the schools are standardized. There are certain schools in Fiji, for example, don't have computer labs. There are certain schools in Fiji that don't have science labs. So we want to ensure that everybody has that quality infrastructure available to them so the teachers can teach better, the committees can actually work together with them. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and your patience in listening to this brief summary of the education sector. The Honorable Prime Minister sends his compliments and he wished he was here, but unfortunately international obligations has had him tied down. But I'm sure he'd like to catch up with you at some stage. And I wish you a good evening. Thank you.